things to do in Athens, an Athens travel guide. Hello and welcome back to yet another adventure-filled video. Today we're going to be looking at the top things to do in Athens, Greece. Athens is a city with about 700,000 people in the inner city and almost 4 million in the metropolitan region. If you ever need to visit Athens, one of the things on your list of things to do during your stay should be visiting the museum. In the museums, you get to see the ballad discs from ancient Greek courts, step in the Theater of Dionysus, which is the very place where Euripides and Aristophanes staged their plays, or walk the agora knowing that your path will be the same once trodden by Plato and Socrates. Overwhelming, right? Sure, I know. But Athens is far more than an archaeological site. From the jungle of concrete towers in the modern city to Placa, a warren of alleys built over ancient Athens residential quarters. Going through the cityscape are like going through hills like Mount Lycabettus and Philopapos, where you can see the lie of the land and see the Acropolis on its rocky throne. Well, want to know the best part of Athens? Let's get into it now. Number 10. Panathenaic Stadium. Erected for the 1896 Olympics, the Panathenaic Stadium is a modern reconstruction of an ancient stadium built for the Panathenaic Games in 330 BC. 200 years later, the ancient monument has been rendered in marble by the Athenian Roman senator Herodes Atticus. Furthermore, with a U-shaped layout, the Panathenaic Stadium is an almost exact replica of the construction from the 2nd century BC, and like its ancient ancestor, is composed completely from marble. It was seen around the world during the 2004 Athens Olympics, when it staged the archery events and was the finish line for both the men's and women's marathon. The stadium can hold 45,000 spectators, and from its highest tiers you can see the Acropolis and the National Garden. Number 9. Placa. Another place you must visit in Athens is the antidote to both the silent ancient temples and traffic-heavy modern city, known as Placa, which lies on the top of the ancient Athens residential quarters in the shadow of the Acropolis. It's a district of tight, twisting alleys with 19th century facades garlanded with flowering bougainvillea in summer. Placa is jam-packed with family-run shops, each with something alluring, from ceramics to musical instruments to handmade jewelry to specialty food shops stacked high with olives and spices. And whether you want to pick up a gyro or sit down for a rest, Placa is a go-to for dinner and nightlife. Number 8. Mount Lycabettus. Unlike Athens, most summits, which you may need to pay for, Mount Lycabettus is free to climb on foot. But who doesn't like to take a funicular to the summit? Well, northeast of the city center, this screeches limestone peak rises to 300 meters, and its lower slopes are decked in pine trees, which become sparser as you approach the rocky summit. The walk is best saved for winter and not too searing. Athens summer, while the funicular runs on the hour and a half. At the top, you'll be bowled over by the best panorama of the city and can take your time to pick out the Acropolis, the temple of Olympian Zeus, the Piraeus coast and peaks like Pentelicus, which yield the marble for the Acropolis, and the soaring Parnitha in the north. Number Number 7. Theater of Dionysus. European drama was born at the Theater of Dionysus, which was first used for performances in the 6th century BC. Carved into the rocky southern slope of the Acropolis, it was the first theater ever constructed. The current design is from the middle of the 4th century BC, when the statesman Lycurgus oversaw the city's finances, although a lot of changes were made later in the Roman period. This monument is charged with meaning. The Theater of Dionysus hosted numerous activities such as the Dionysia Festival, entered by dramatists like Sophocles, Aeschylus, Euripides, Menander, and Aristophanes. It can be quite overwhelming to realize that you're looking at the same stage where all of the classical masterpieces were performed, many for the first time. Number 6. Acropolis Museum. The Acropolis Museum is on the southeast slope, and it was unveiled in 2009 to present the many thousand of artifacts discovered on the archaeological site of the Acropolis. It is smartly oriented to give you constant views of the Parthenon. Also, the museum is built over ancient ruins, and much of the ground floor has glass panels and open spaces. On 3 levels, visitors are sent on a chronological trip through the centuries, starting with the hill's archaic discoveries in a large trapezoidal hall that also has findings from the Erection and Propylaea Gateway and the Temple of Athena Nike. After this, you can go up to wonder at the marbles from the frieze, including metopes and the pediments of the Parthenon, and a hall with the same dimensions, column spacing, and orientation as the temple. The tour then continues back down through Roman and early Christian Athens. Number 5. Temple of Hephaestus. At the top of the 65-meter Agoraios Kolonos hill on the northwest side of the Agora of Athens, the Temple of Hephaestus is a Doric peripteral temple in an amazing state of preservation. It was built in the second half of the 5th century BC, and construction was delayed for 3 decades because funds and labor were redirected towards the Parthenon. Designed by Ictinus, the temple was dedicated to Athena and Hephaestus, who was the ancient god of fire, metalworking, forge, sculpture, and stone masonry, and has 6 fluted columns on its west side and 13 on its north and south. You can also make out plenty of sculpted elements from the labor of Hercules and meotopes on the east side to the pronaos and opisthodomos, which show Theseus with the Pallantides and the battle of the centaurs and lapids. Number 4. National Archaeological Museum. A veritable wonderland of ancient art. It's pretty obvious that Athens National Archaeological Museum should be one of the largest and richest in the world. The galleries are jammed with star exhibits that have been beguiling scholars for generations. You can take findings from the Antikythera wreck, identified in 1900s and dating back to the 4th century BC. This yielded of the Antikythera mechanism, which is considered as the world's oldest analog computer and the contemplative philosopher's head. Then there's the mask of Agamemnon, a gold funerary mask from the 16th century BC, most likely made from Mycenaean royalty, though too early for Agamemnon. You can also see the Eleusinian relief from the 5th century BC, as well as Bronze Age frescoes from the island of Santorini and Thera, and the Jockey of Artemision, a begilding statue of a racehorse from 150 or 140 BC. Number 3. Museum of Ancient Agora. This museum holds one of the monuments in Agora, which is the Stoa of Attalos, and it was totally reconstructed in the 1950s. This covered walkway was first built by Attalos II in the mid-2nd century BC, but was wrecked by the Hercules in 267. The new building was as faithful as possible to the archaeological knowledge of the day, and it still hosts the Museum of the Ancient Agora, showing off the artifacts brought to light during excavations in the area by the American School of Classical Studies. You will definitely not want to miss out on seeing the Neolithic Bronze Age, Iron Age, and Geometric period figurines, weapons, and vases recovered from tombs and wells. You can also see some thrilling pieces relating to Athenian democracy in the classical and late classical periods, like an official bronze weight, shards of pottery used in ostracism ballots, astracons, claim measuring devices, bronze and lead ballot discs only used in ballots. Number 2. Byzantine and Christian Museum. Even if you're not an expert in archaic and classical Greece, the Byzantine Museum from around the 200s to the 1400s has a lot of wonders in store for you. It was housed in the Neo-Renaissance Villa Elysia from 1848. The Byzantine and Christian Museum opened in the 1914 and was refurbished in the time of the Olympics in 2004. There is bewitching assortments of sculptures, icons, frescoes, jewelry, architectural fragments, religious vestments, manuscripts, books, and mosaics. You'll get to know its landmark events, like when Christianity was made legal by Constantine and Roman power shifted from Rome to Constantinople in the 4th century. The museum also studies the decline of Byzantine power and how Venetian-controlled territories with cosmopolitan populations helped lay the path for the Renaissance in Europe. Number 1. Acropolis. One of the best wonders of Athens is the Acropolis. The Acropolis is on an abrupt rocky outcrop above the city and has world-renowned classical landmarks that people spend whole lifetimes waiting to see in the flesh. The pinnacle of these is, of course, the Parthenon, but the Propylaea and their Erechtheion and the Temple of Athena Nike are indispensable, and you can skip the queues and get enthralling inside facts in tidbits about ancient Greek, democracy, and philosophy with a registered guide. Moving way up is steep and slippery on a time-worn marble, but until you reach the flat summit, you better be prepared for cranes and scaffolding, which are an understandable necessity for a World Heritage Site.